Well, it's been a month, and I guess it's time to talk about it. I want to start this video by giving a huge thank you to my top tier Wizard and Master patrons. Thank you, Nico, Ryan, Sharon, Scott, Mike, Aaron, Leslie, Doug, Chris, Wystitch, Twaney, Spyro, Reading Rainbow, Sarah, and Chris the Bookaholic. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, I am Andrew, and it is time to do a monthly wrap-up and talk about everything that I read in August of 2023. But before we get into this, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow. And you can check the description box down below for links to all of my social media, including information about my Patreon, if you want to help support the channel in a more substantial way. It's got additional perks, additional videos, and things of that nature. It's all very, very helpful, and it is always greatly appreciated, but never mandatory. That said, guys, we're going to jump right on into this because I've got a rather beefy wrap-up to do. And we're going to start by doing my SPFBO Semi-Finalist announcement. I read 6 books, and 1 stood out from the pack for me. I really, really enjoyed this book. I took my time with it. I read it over a couple months where I would just kind of take little tidbits and little bites and samples and stuff like that. And I had a great time reading it. It had a lot of great themes. It was gritty. It was dark. And it's got somebody on the cover doing a power pose. My SPFBO Semi-Finalist for Team Bookborn is The Price of Power by Michael McKell. And I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this book. It's got so many themes. It's got POV shifts. It's got dealing with trauma. It's got like fantasy drug use. So this is a darker book, but it's also like dealing with your own kind of demons and learning what the price of power is. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I will be doing a dedicated SPFBO Semi-Finalist book review in the near future. But right now, I am just letting you know that The Price of Power is moving forward in SPFBO 9. That said, and with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the books I read. I'm going to kind of try and kind of stagger between digital and physical, so I've got something to hold up. We'll see if my brain actually does that. So we're going to start off with The Spirits of Vengeance by Rob J. Hayes. And initially, I knew I wanted to read this one, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to fit it in. And then, mood reading brain kind of kicked in, and I just started kind of going okay, yeah, I've got time for this. And I really, really liked this book. I didn't love it. I thought Pawn's Gambit was, peak Mortal Techniques, and this was really good. It was just a bit more combat heavy. There was a lot of fables. I think the characters in this one were the strongest, but it just felt, I don't know, it's the longest of I can't say trilogy because it's not a trilogy, which I thought it was a trilogy. Come to find out, it's not. But Spirits of Vengeance, it was really good. I gave it about a 4.5 out of 5. It just felt a hair indulgent on its length. And we kind of dive into some stuff, into some trauma. And I don't know if I needed all of that page count, but it was still really enjoyable to consume. That may sound nitpicky, but sometimes I get a little nitpicky. But, yeah. The nitpicks will continue, though, with the next book that I put down. And that is The Servant of Empire. I almost said Spirit of Vengeance again. And no, this is Servant of Empire. This is book 2 in the Empire trilogy. I'm about 125 pages into this book. And I went on record and said I absolutely loved Daughter of the Empire last month. It was probably my favorite book of all time, which set quite a high bar that Servant of the Empire did not meet. Honestly, it felt like the author duo, Jenny Wirtz and Raymond D. Feist, messed with, the formula that they had going. Depending on who wrote the majority of what book, this felt written by a different author, in my opinion. It focuses more on romance. It's got some naming conventions in here that I just wasn't falling in love with. It's multi-POV, so we're getting less of Mara, which Mara was the drawing point for me in this book. Instead, we're getting more of the villainous POV. I can't think of the name now, but I have to talk about it. But it just overall, like 124 pages in, and it just wasn't working for me. So I'm going to try and read this in September instead of Mistress and get it underneath the belt, because a lot of people said that this was just as good as Daughter of the Empire, and 125 pages in, I just don't agree. But it's not a DNF. I'm just moving this one to the next month because I wasn't in the mood for it, and it wasn't doing it for me the way that I was expecting it to, which that is a thing on expectation. It can be dangerous. Next up, we did Crystal Gunslinger by Oliver Laws, and this one was very interesting. I gave it about a 3.5 to a 4 out of 5, and it's a kind of fantasy western, which I love my fantasy westerns, and I am fascinated by this one because it kind of takes this kind of, how do I talk about the world building? Because it's based around crystals. It's the Crystal Gunslinger. Like, he's got like a ruby repeater, and he kind of hires out to do jobs. He's like a man in hiding, and it was very interesting. One of the things that kind of bugged me on it was we didn't even get the main character's name until like the second or third chapter when they introduced themselves. Till then, it's very Western. It's very mysterious kind of thing going on, but that's not normally the way I like to read. Like, it works visually on like visual media, but on the written book, like on the page, I'd like to know who I'm reading about relatively early on in the story. And then it was just very fast paced. It was really cool. There's a lot of great world building here. There's like crystal monsters, and it's got like half goblins, which you always hear about the half elf, but never a half goblin. So I really, really enjoyed that. Overall, like I'm excited to read more from this world, because there's just like a one line that was mentioned in this book of like this kind of benevolent vampire mayor who like sends out his ghouls to like help the townspeople with like, their farming. And instead of taking like a monetary tax, he takes a blood tax, and the people seem to be okay with that because it means more money in their pocket. I thought that was fantastic. I actually tweeted the author and was like, can I get that book? Because I'd read it. Next up, I feel like I'm going to be negative this month, but it is what it is. This was probably the best read book that I had really no interest in reading at the time. My mood reading kicked in hard this month, and that's Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. And I know, don't yell at me, I'm sorry. I got about 4 to 5 chapters into this, 4 or 5 chapters. I got 5 chapters into this book, and like 2.5 to 3 of them were about ladies of ill repute. Ladies of the night, if you will. There was either their POVs or men thinking about him or talking about him. And after 5 chapters, I was like, I don't really care to learn about streetwalkers and all of that. Like, I get it. That's what you want to think about, and that's what's in this world, and that's what this time was like. I get it, but it was a bit too much of that subject, and I was like, I thought this was going to be something else. And maybe it is something else, and I just didn't get a chance to get to it, but it lost my interest because it was just all about that one subject, or about killing Indians and then going and sleeping with women in the brothels, and I was like, I get it. But I just kind of lost my interest before I could ever snag it. It is going to remain high on my TBR, though, because I do want to give it another shot. So I'm not like putting this back at the bottom of the TBR. Like, it's like, this didn't work for me. This is going to be like, I'm going to chalk this up to a mood read thing, where it's like my mood wasn't in the mood to mood with that. I don't know. I tried to say a thing. It didn't work. But next up, we have got Traitor in Skyhold. This is Mage Errant number 3. And Mage Errant number 3 started off kind of rocky because we're kind of getting back from the events of book 2. We're back in Skyhold, and then we kind of just move into the school year. And the first half of the book is just kind of them going about doing like classwork and learning spells and going about their daily lives and fretting about certain things. And I wasn't vibing with that super hard, but then like the second half of the book, the stakes really ramp up. And I mean, it's in the title, Traitor in Skyhold. There was a traitor in Skyhold, and seeing how that shakes out and things of that nature. This felt like the closing of the first arc, where we can kind of get to see where Hugh's going to go after these events have closed. So I'm very excited to kind of read the rest of the series and see where we go. I give this one about 4 to 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. All right, I came back to an NFN. and that is David Gimmel's The Legend of Deathwalker. And I picked right back up where I left off. I didn't feel great having just put this Draenei book down. I wanted to come back to Draenei because apparently the next two, I've got Winter Warriors next after this one. And then after that, I think it's Waylander 3, Hero in the Shadows. And I wanted to finish this out. I wanted to see how it was going to end. And most of my critiques kind of still hold true. I think this is overlong. I think this is David Gimmel trying to move from heroic fantasy, which is the type of sword and sorcery, and kind of move into the modern kind of fantasy. And I think he's working out and experimenting with how to do that. The last chapter of this book really, really, really saved it for me because it recontextualizes and does a retcon that I really loved of the series, going all the way back to Legend. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was inventive, I thought it was cool, and I thought it recontextualized the whole story and made it a lot better for me. So the last chapter of this book brought it up like a half star to a full star. I think I gave this one like a 3.5 to a 4 stars. It was going to be a 3-star read just because like I wanted the Druss storyline, but the Talisman storyline wasn't really working for me. And then it just kind of brought it all together at the end, like last moment. I was like, okay, that was cool. I really liked that. So we've got that one. Next up, we have got Sufficiently Advanced Magic. And if you want to know how I feel about Sufficiently Advanced Magic, I backed the Kickstarter late for the Wraithmark Creative Special Edition. That's how I felt about it. That was not a cheap book. But guys, I loved Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe. And it's funny because I tried reading it in 2020. I've got a book review coming out. I gave this one 5 stars. I thought it was very inventive. I fell in love with it. I really wanted to get to the second book this month, but I ran out of time. Oh, this was good. If you like the school setting and you like autistic protagonists and you like just really cool and inventive worlds, this one's really good. I've got the book review coming out here, I think in the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that, where I'll talk more in my depth on my thoughts. But man, I loved it, and I can't wait to continue the series. And it's kind of got like 2 series that are kind of woven via like multi-timeline going on. And so I'm looking forward to reading both of those series. I'm gonna do kind of like not the like chronological order, which would make sense, but then I wouldn't get to Sufficiently Advanced Magic till like book 8, and I'm not willing to do that. So and they're both in progress series, so it's going to be a while before this is wrapped up, but I'm excited to continue. So if we did Sufficiently Advanced Magic, it is now time to do The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. And I should mention that I did a challenge this month with one of my patrons, Spyro, where I just let him pick like 3 or 4 books for me to read. And The Talisman was one of them. And I was nervous going into The Talisman because I'd heard it was either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. And luckily, it's basically about a young man Jack Sawyer, whose mother is dying of cancer. And he is going on a quest to find a magical object that can save her life. And this is set in both the real world and kind of like a mirror world that's kind of fantasy-esque. And like, you know, distance is different there and all of that. Well, as somebody who lost their mother to cancer at a young age, and I say young, I was 21, 22. But I was able to identify with Jack and his struggles and his want to save his mother, who is like this retired, like, silent film actress. She smokes like a chimney. And, like, you know, there's just a whole bunch of really great stuff in here that I really, really liked. Plus, there's a character called Wolf, and Wolf is fantastic. I loved Wolf. Wolf was great. It's definitely quirky. I can see why people wouldn't like The Talisman. I can 100% understand. But for me, it just worked. I gave this one about 4 stars. It wasn't like a top favorite King book of all time. But I really, really vibed with it. I really liked it. Next up, again, one of Spyro's picks. Spyro also picked Sufficiently Advanced Magic. And then the other one that I did was The Wandering Inn. And I've done some content on The Wandering Inn. I'm really enjoying The Wandering Inn. I'm actually 10% already into Volume 2. Which I guess we can kind of throw that into the wrap-up that I've already started Volume 2 before the end of the month. But, I mean, it's so long that, like, 5 hours of audio was only 10% of the book. If that kind of lets you know how long it is. Well, I guess 6 hours of audio. Yeah, 6 hours of audio is only 10% of the book. So if I'm going to get anything read in September, I have to start this one early. But I love The Wandering Inn. I think I'm going to be planning more content around this series. I do have a plan why I love the world of The Wandering Inn and why I think you should read it. I've got that it's planned for September, but I don't know if it's going to make it in September. I've got all these ideas coming up, and now I'm like, oh no, I have to do like 3 videos a week in order to like get all of my ideas out in a timely fashion, and I don't know if I have time to do that, but we shall see. It was fantastic. It's a big series. I tried to sell Murphy Napier on it on the Wizardly Ramblings number 9 that we did. If you haven't seen that Wizardly Rambling, it's right there. It was a ton of fun. Murphy's amazing, and I just had such a great time chatting with her. But you should totally read this book. It's got an amazing audiobook. It's got a amazing ebook. Interesting structure in terms of like chapter naming, but it kind of makes it easier to talk in the Wandering Discord about what specific section you're in. So, I'm here for it. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I did do a book review for The Wandering Inn right there if you want to check it out. But we're going to move on to one I'm not sure I talked about in the last wrap-up, and that's Berserk Deluxe Volume 2. This is, again, more of the Golden Arc, and I am really starting to vibe with the coming-of-age story with Guts, and this kind of follows his rise to power, or I guess his rise and fall. I don't know how I want to word that. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to start talking about Berserk Volume 2. I will let you know that I love this even more than Volume 1. It was a great kind of strengthening of the depth of the story. And we kind of get to see how he became so dark and jaded and what led to that. But man, it's a gut punch. And I imagine that's going to continue when I read Volume 3. After that, we've got Mark of the Fool, number 3. And this is, again, fantastic. I love Mark of the Fool, especially narrated by Travis Baldree. Fantastic audiobook. And I fell in love with kind of web novels, which is a form of self-pub. I've got a video recorded already. I just need to edit and publish it out for you guys. I haven't quite gotten around to doing that yet, but I will. This kind of deals with a tournament. And this is where the story slows down because it doesn't quite feel like a progression entry into a progression fantasy. We kind of slow down, we assess where everybody's at, and you're either going to like that, you're not. Because if you're there for the progression, you're not going to get a whole lot of progression because it's mainly focusing on a competition. And kind of taking the time to see where everybody's power level is currently at and where we've come, or where we're at to where we started. But again, I like tournament settings in my books, so it always works for me. So this one was a home run. And we really get to see what Claygon can do in Mark of the Fool, Volume 3. Next up, we have got The Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan. And again, I did another book review for this one. If it'll fit up on the cards, it'll be right there. If not, it'll be in the description box down below. Why not both? But I love this one. It's Inkwell Featherfield. Featherfield? Yeah, I wanted to say Featherfall, but that's a D&D spell. And so I'm glad I didn't say that. But Featherfield, who's kind of this Artful Dodger-style character, gets wrapped up in this rebellion, and it's fantastic. There's a little bit of horror aspects, there's some ghostiness stuff going on, and there's fantasy races and magic and a floating town, and it's just awesome. I really, really enjoyed this one. Again, check out the review if you want my full thoughts. I give this one 5 stars all day long. The last book I have to talk about, I am currently 70% through. I am recording this on the 29th of August. But again, that gives me 2 days to read, I think 2 hours, which isn't a problem. And this is Shadow of Hyperion, Hybrid Helix number 4 by J.C.M. Byrne. We get to explore more of Ronan's kind of backstory and explore some relationships going on. If you've read up to this point in the series, you know who Hyperion is. And that can kind of give you some ideas on what this book is going to be addressing. It's very good, and I'm finally getting some growth within Ronan and within the story that I've been wanting. Ronan has it hard when it comes to the dating life, and so we're going to kind of see how that plays out. But I love Hybrid Helix. If you're not reading Hybrid Helix, it's so digestible. It's so fun. But it's also got, like, injections of hard-hitting themes that I really like that JCM explores. So please go ahead and order the entire series and do yourself a favor, read it, and enjoy it. That's all I've really got for you this month. I believe that's everything that I have read within August of 2023. Let me know what you read. What was your favorite book? For me, if I have to choose a book of the month, I'm going to go... it's a tie between Sufficiently Advanced Magic and The Wandering, and I can't decide between the two. I loved both of those books, so that should tell you that you need to read both of those books. But again, let me know your book of the month. Let me know your favorite. Let me know your least favorite. Let me just know how you are doing. And that's all I really got for you this month. So till next time, guys, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.